wardrobe for Tom Merritt is provided by himself. I mean,
you didn't.
Maybe I'm renting this shirt, but I literally am renting this shirt.
Are you?
Yeah. What are you doing? You checking your light meter?
I'm going to reduce some of this biz.
Okay. The shirt's due back by the end of the week. Not really, but it is one of the, I rent a box of clothing every month.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
How does that work?
$40 a month. And they send you a box of shirts and pants that are stylish that they picked out. You can give them feedback. Then you send them back and they send you a new box.
This is which service?
The Mr. Collection.
And what if you especially love it? Can you just say,
you can buy, yeah, you can choose to buy something if you're like, oh, this is great. I need to keep this.
This
is not especially cheap, though.
It's what?
It's not especially cheap to buy their stuff, though.
Yeah, but okay, $40 a month. The Mr. Collection, MIS.
Yeah. And then the reason I do it is like then I don't have to think about stuff for shoots. Not so much for DTNS where you see me here.
Well, what's funny is I realized I used to. There's a number of schemes when I was shooting Scam School. I would reached out to an artist named Rob Dobby who has fullbleed.net, and I was like, hey man, I really love your shirts. And he was like, hey, you have a show. You want me to send you shirts? I was like, just keep sending me shirts and I'll wear them.
That's great. Yeah.
And but then I ran through his whole collection, and so now I'll go to parts and labor, but it's like it gets expensive. You want 5 shirts, and all of a sudden it's $200 for T-shirts. I'm like,
yeah. What? Yeah, exactly. That's why. I mean, I don't think if I just worked, if I didn't work in front of a camera ever, that I don't know if I would do the Mr. Collection thing, because it's not really cost effective. It's better to just buy things and then wear them until they fall apart.
How many things do you get every month?
I get usually it's like 3 shirts and a pair of pants.
All right, hold on. My daughter just arrived. I had a schedule, so I'm going to explain the deal to her.
All right, minute to air, Brian.
Hey, Josie. Yes,
sweetie. This is coming from a person who used to buy all of his clothing from thrift shops as of 2000, as of the year 2000, as Roger can attest.
Is I what?
I used to buy all my clothing from thrift shops.
I did that in college.
I'm sure you recall my wardrobe when I was working at ZDTV.
No, actually, I don't remember a wardrobe. It was more like the same. It's more like the same 4 shirts.
Yeah.
I'm gonna change you with different pants. It's a different outfit.
That's right.
No, I ended up buying a lot of blue shirts, and then someone noticed and called for help. It's like, why does Roger always wear blue shirts? And we had a whole joke set up where we would just pull out this hanger, a bunch of, what do you call the rolly things that you hang stuff on? We would wheel it out like a rolling wardrobe. We would just do a bunch of blue shirts. Different shades of blue, mind you, but they're all blue.
Let your father go. We need him for the show. Hurry. Oh my. Actually, Brian warned me this would happen, so it's all good. It's all good.
His job would happen.
Ready.
All right.
Ready.
Here we go. Ready for action. Ready for action.
The Daily Tech News Show is brought to you by me. Aw, thanks, me. If you also wish to bring it, go to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. That's dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, April 12th, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, in place of Patrick Beja, who has finally adapted to Japan time and needed the day off, Mr. Brian Brushwood, host of Night Attack, Cord Killers, and Weird Things, is here. And Scam School, your most successful show. I almost forgot. How's it going, man?
And also the television show Hacking the System. Did you mention that one?
Hacking the System, you say?
Yeah.
I heard that's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. And boy, oh boy, could it use your reviews. Head on over to Netflix if you're in the United States. If you're in Canada, I deeply apologize. But also your fault for being in Canada.
One of the reasons that yeah, how dare you be born in Canada? One of the reasons that I wanted to mention Scam School is because Brian has the Scam Stuff store that he sells a lot of gear for the modern rogue in. And because of that, he does business on Alibaba with Chinese manufacturers. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that experience, that sort of, cross the ocean business relationship. We've got a story in the headlines today about Alibaba moving into Southeast Asia. And want to get your experience, Brian, as a small entrepreneur.
Well, first of all, my height has nothing to do with my entrepreneurial standing. Yes, I'm only
You're a perfectly normal height, Brian.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Let's move into the headlines. F8 developers conference going on. We got tons of news out of there. Facebook announced Agents on Messenger. That's the bot program that everybody was expecting for businesses to create chatbots for customer service, e-commerce, all kinds of things. Chatbots can respond with structured messages as expected. That includes links and buttons, so you can click on stuff. You can put galleries in there. Facebook also launched a live video API that lets you broadcast to Facebook from any device. Company also revealed an open source VR camera design called Surround 360. It's a 17 lens camera with an aluminum body. It requires almost no post-production work because there's a stitching algorithm, but they're not selling it. What they're doing is open sourcing the design and putting it up with the algorithm on GitHub. Parts are estimated to cost you $30,000 if you put it together yourself, so it's still not cheap. But Facebook really into video, obviously owning Oculus, really into VR. Brian, interesting move to open source the camera rather than trying to sell it.
To be honest, I think that's the only way that they can win here. I think that when you have such an established foothold in one space, in this case, keeping you connected to the people that you love, archiving your weddings, your births, and all of that stuff, they could sell that information back to you at some point. But if you're suddenly going to decide to be a video producer, I understand that they needed to diversify, and I think Oculus is a good investment for them, but I don't see them being a market leader in that space unless they do something bold and wild like this.
Yeah, and it creates content, which Oculus needs and Facebook Live needs, so it makes sense to me there too. Facebook announced Facebook Profile Expression Kit. That one lets developers feed videos recorded in their apps right into the profile picture on Facebook. So think Vine could now say, hey, you just took a cool Vine of yourself. You want to make that your profile picture on Facebook? Here you go. Launch partners include Instagram, Cinemagraph, and Masquerade. That's the one that's spelled MSQRD. Mevo, which formerly was called Movi, I don't know why they move the vowels around, is the first camera to be integrated to Facebook Live streaming. It also streams to live stream. Mevo ships in July for a hefty $399, although you can save $100 if you pre-order it now. Now, setting aside for the moment, Brian, the fact that you can only send it to Facebook Live and live stream for the moment, it is interesting. This camera, what it does is it automatically changes angles. It's just one camera with a wide view, but it can recognize faces and focus in on them, recognize objects and move on, and do basically virtual camera switching.
Sure. And to be honest, when I first saw this, I was super excited about the promise of it, but when you watch the actual video, yes, it's able to move from a close-up on the face on the right to a close-up on the face of the left to a wide shot of both of the faces. But to be honest, all of a sudden, when you watch the demo video, what you notice is the reason daytime television looks good while they're chopping up vegetables is not the fact that they're cutting into the face and then back to the whole body and then into the face. It's that they have different angles. It's that they have an overhead shot. It's that they have a close-up, a wide, and from different stuff, and the lighting matters and stuff. So I feel like this device is largely something that has the trappings of high-quality programming there, and by programming I'm talking about video programming, but doesn't have any of the art or the nuance of what it actually takes. Maybe I'll be wrong on this, but I feel like if I'm watching this, it'll take about 20 seconds of watching a live video for me to say, like, oh yeah, this is one of those $200 things. This is all just really one camera.
And I guess what Facebook cares about is it's a matter of perspective. If you're watching Facebook Live and you're comparing it to the guy holding up a smartphone, you're like, oh, that actually looks pretty good. But yeah, if you're comparing it to daytime TV, it's not going to compare as well.
Well, and that's one of the things is it appears that this device is approaching the mushy middle. Like if you're going to start spending this kind of money, you might be better off just buying 3 separate webcams and investing in some free software like any of the Twitch streamers use.
And man, if any of you watch Cord Killers, Brian does not like the mushy middle. He put caution tape around it.
True.
He's like, stay away. A few more F8 tidbits here. The M platform, that's their chat assistant platform that actually combines humans with machine learning. They're opening that up as something called wit.ai. At least that's the URL you'll go to take advantage of the machine learning there. Developers can go there and get the account kit. I'm sorry, developers can go there and take advantage of that. So wit.ai. Account kit is a separate thing. That'll let developers authenticate users with SMS or an email address that the user then verifies. No Facebook account required. Now, you can log in with Facebook with Account Kit as well. But what they're saying is, look, if your users don't want to sign up for Facebook, we are going to provide you a way to authenticate them easily anyway. They can either put in a phone number and get an SMS, click on it, and they're verified, or they can get an email and click on it and verified. Either way, it's a better way to authenticate. Indian music service Savan has tested the service with 500,000 signups over 2 months. And I guess the idea is Facebook feels like if we get developers to use this, it doesn't matter if some people aren't signing up to Facebook to use it, because the fact that it'll have Facebook authentication means a bunch of people will have Facebook and will get the data.
That's one of the curious artifacts that comes from having such an incredibly dominant position in the market, is you can look out across the landscape of all of humanity and say, you know what, all of humanity wants this. Well, why don't we provide it? Because 2/3 of humanity is on our service.
Yeah. HTC. Oh, we're out of F8 news. There we go. HTC officially announced the HTC 10 phone. No more M's in the HTC phone names. The 5.2-inch phone has a 64-bit Snapdragon 820 quad-core processor, 4 gigabytes of RAM, an Adreno 530 GPU, micro SD card slot. You can pump that thing up to about 2 terabytes. 2K resolution at 564 pixels per inch. 12 megapixel camera on it, has a 1.5 micron pixels, so they're bigger pixels, 4K video recording capability, and f1.8 OIS. Also has a 3,000 milliamp hour battery and USB-C, as we mentioned from the leaked video yesterday. HTC Boom Sound is on there still. It has a front speaker that acts as a tweeter, and then the bottom speakers act as woofers. The whole phone weighs 161 grams, and HTC licensed Apple's AirPlay so that you don't have to use some side-winding Android app to emulate AirPlay. It's built into the phone, legitimately licensed from Apple, apparently. Pre-orders start today for $699, and it will ship in May.
Full disclosure, I'm an Apple guy as far as the phone and the mobile space goes, so I'm shocked to hear that they're officially licensing the AirPlay stuff. And we've talked about this on Cord Killers. You know, you've got competing standards with being able to sling to your Chromecast and so on. I think this is a great move for Apple to make this the ubiquitous standard.
Box announced a new option for its customers in Europe and Asia to store their data regionally. It's called Box Zones. The new service will be available next month. Box is using Amazon and IBM to power Box Zones. They'll be able to store data across Germany, Ireland, Singapore, and Japan. A lot of this has to do with either the worries about the US-EU data transfer pact, that whole safe harbor pact, which is still being debated, or just general, like, since the Snowden revelations, I kind of want to keep my data outside the US.
You know what's funny is it totally makes sense in the short term, but I wonder how far off we are before even that kind of stuff seems silly. As we start to, the internet starts to bring us all closer together and we start to feel more and more like one gigantic organism, I think this is completely appropriate for where we are now and for the disputes that's happening. But I just wonder, what if in our lifetime even this could look silly and tribalistic by future standards?
Well, I think 5-10 years ago, this would look silly and tribalistic in a way. It's like, well, why wouldn't you want your data just near wherever your users are? Why do you want to keep it near you? But yeah, we're in an interesting and unique period in internet history, and the pessimists will say, you're naive, Brian. It's just going to keep getting worse, and the internet's falling apart. It's breaking into pieces. It's finally ending. I'm more on your side on this one, where I feel like this is just a dip. And eventually, I don't know how long it'll take, we'll go back to realizing, no, the internet works best when it's worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Petya is a ransomware piece of malware that replaces your master boot record and then encrypts the master file table so that you can't even get into your operating system unless you pay them the ransom. Someone at the Twitter account Leostone is a security researcher and has a tool out that people have vetted that can unlock Petya. You'll need to remove the drive from the infected computer and then connect it to an uninfected Windows PC. You got to pull some specific data off that and use a web app to create a password, although Fabian Wosar from security firm MZSoft has created a free tool that can pull the data off for you. It's a nasty piece of malware. It was only made public that it was discovered a couple of weeks ago, and there's already a fix, so that's good.
Yeah, I do you think that we're just going to see a perpetual arms race in this regard? Because, like, I don't know, back in, let's say, around the year 2000, we were looking at, malware I guess viruses, right? Were largely in the business of just tearing up your computer and then leaving it. Somewhere around the mid-2000s, people started to figure out that it's much more valuable to keep the computers in working order, but use them as zombie slaves to shoot spam out or whatever. Like, are we just going to see a perpetual arms race on ransomware? Because it's a brilliant scheme to get money out of people, but if I wonder if they'll figure out a more profitable way to go than continuing with what they're doing now.
I mean, yeah, all of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again. Ransomware is rampant right now because it is more profitable, but it won't be forever. And then, the pendulum will swing into another arena. It'll be interesting to see what arena that is, but it won't always be ransomware, to answer your question, but it will always be something. And you nailed it. It'll always be whatever the malware creators think is going to net them the most money.
Absolutely.
Proposed legislation in New York would require drivers of vehicles involved in accidents to submit their cell phones for inspection. A textilizer, not a breathalyzer, a textilizer, as they're calling it, would then determine if the phone had been in use prior to the crash. The legislation would prevent officers from extracting any data from the phone. The software would only be allowed to tell whether the phone was in use or not. And immediately my first question was, what if I've got Waze or Google Maps or Apple Maps running? Does that in use? Does that count? How does this work?
Yeah, well, and I'm somebody who listens to audiobooks constantly.
Right.
You use phone calls constantly or whatever, and you're always sending and receiving. There's a lot of very good reasons for you to not be comfortable with this kind of snooping on your data. As somebody who has watched The Wire and has removed himself from the chess game between the authorities and the underhanded people of the internet, this makes sense for New York to go for, because they are obviously at the forefront of legislation of this variety. However, I will say, as a staunch libertarian and personal rights advocate and so on, I do want to share with everyone that, for whatever reason, if you don't want people going through your phone, if you have an iOS device, just make sure to reboot it, because you cannot legally be compelled to give up your password to your phone. You can legally be compelled to place your physical fingerprint upon it. So if you reboot, then the fingerprint doesn't do anything. It's only if you punch in the password that they have access.
And I'm assuming that still applies in New York. I know there's regional variations and such, but let's say that applies in New York. Let's say that this law says, no, we don't mind if you had music playing or background processes or maps. All we're checking is, were you interacting with the phone? Did you have your fingers on it? And we have a way to do that doesn't look at any of your data. Then yeah. Your phone reboots and it's locked. I don't know if they can read that or not. I would assume not. And then they can't make the law change the legal precedent because that's a search and seizure thing under the U.S. Constitution, that you can't be forced to give up the password.
Right, and keep in mind, right now it's the textilizer thing, but we're very rapidly, I think, heading to a period of ubiquitous, always-on cameras on there. So at some point in the future, the moment you glance at your camera, they're going to be able to access the record of whether or not, they're going to see your eyes looking at the camera at the moment of impact.
Yeah, and essentially, according to this Verge article, what they're doing is changing the law to say there is implied consent after a crash for you to hand over this phone. So if there's not implied consent for you to hand over your password. Oculus began updating customers who ordered its Rift VR headset with new delayed shipping dates thanks to a component shortage. My late April ship date, I didn't order in the first hour, is now May 30th through June 9th. So they're moving by about a month. I used to have an early April ship date. Orders made now show a shipping date in August, according to The Verge. Oculus is waiving the shipping fees, though, for anybody who ordered before April 1st when they announced the delayed shipping. Alibaba is investing $1 billion to take a controlling interest in Southeast Asian e-commerce platform Lazada. Bloomberg notes that Alibaba chairman Jack Ma has a goal of getting half the company's revenue from outside of China. Lazada operates in Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. And I think it's like 87% of Alibaba's revenue comes from within China right now. So they really want to spread that around, and they're buying their way into Southeast Asia. Lazada is a strong platform, but this is a market that doesn't have a single dominant player yet.
Yeah, it was really interesting. We had a brief powwow before the show, and as we were going through the stories, you're like, yeah, I don't know that this one matters. I'm like, matters to me. You're like, why would Alibaba matter to you? And I'm like, because I run a very small boutique online shop called Scam Stuff, and we source some of our stuff from Alibaba and AliExpress. Like, this is huge. And I don't think most people realize how much of the stuff they buy, if you follow the thread far enough back, eventually at some point gets sourced from these guys. You know, they've opened up the global marketplace to small business people all over the world.
We're going to talk a little bit about that in the discussion section as well. A couple more stories before we get there, though. This week, Lyft and Didi are launching the beta of their cross-platform ride-sharing service that lets Chinese Didi users hail a Lyft Classic or Lyft Plus ride in the U.S. just using their Didi app. So it does the currency conversion of all of that. Bilingual Chinese customer support is available. It can translate between the rider and the driver. That's accessed right from the app. That's the first step. Next step will be letting Lyft riders do the same thing in China. That's what they're working on now. And they plan to expand this to not only include Lyft and Didi, but also Grab in Southeast Asia and Ola in India. So essentially, Brian, trying to create a worldwide code sharing network a la the airlines.
Yeah, well, and what's great about this is that it forces them to have a bit of introspection where these different companies have to have conversations about, like, how do you vet your drivers? What level of risk are you comfortable with? What qualifications do they have? How do you know whether or not their cars are safe or whatever? Because the last thing Lyft wants is somebody getting in a Didi car and then regretting it and feel like it throws shade on Lyft. I think that's great. I think in general, membership in the Star Alliance or whatever whatever proper code sharing organization they ended up calling it will be largely good for ride sharing in general and for the consumer.
Yeah, and it's a cheaper way to go about it than Uber, which is just trying to start their own organization head-to-head with Didi and Grab and Ola and obviously Lyft here in the United States. So more Voltron-like, joining together to become the giant robot of
which is probably the only play they have against Uber. Uber has, obviously a dominant market share right now. But I got to tell you, I tried during South by Southwest. Uber was not available. Took all of 3 minutes for me to install the Lyft app and suddenly have a Lyft there. And of course, I end up interviewing everyone. Turns out it's a guy who lives just down the street who's like, yeah, I don't know, I guess I'm driving Lyft for a while. And I love the fact that it's so easy to migrate both for the consumer and for the providers.
Finally, Google is beta testing accessibility software called Voice Access to allow users to access core Android functions hands-free. 9to5 Google reports that unlike other accessibility apps, Voice Access will overlay numbers on top of elements on a screen for more precise control, in addition to voice commands like Open Chrome and Go Home. And
yeah,
actually, Xbox does this when you do voice commands on Xbox. It puts the numbers up there for you as well.
That's awesome. I wish I had a little more experience with this. I've messed around a bit with the screen curtain and the accessibility features on iOS, but nothing in the Android universe. I would love to hear from other people if this is a catch-up measure to what iOS is doing, or if this is an advance beyond where iOS is at with their accessibility features.
Big thanks to Jay Namadon, Steve I.O., Jeff Rose, everybody who submitted things we used from our subreddit. Submit your stories and vote on them. Help make the lineup. I look at the Daily Tech News Show Reddit as the third signal in my all the signals that I put together. Well, actually, the fourth signal, I guess. So I look at my own RSS feeds, I look at Tech Meme, I look at Google News, look at the subreddit. So it really helps me put things together. So the more of you who use it, the better the show gets. dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com, and that is a look at the headlines. All right, so Alibaba controlling interest in Lazada. They're spending $500 million for new shares, and then they're buying out $500 million of existing shares from investors. They're going to try, as we said, to make half their revenue from overseas. But as Brian mentioned, this sparked a conversation where I was like, "Well, I guess this is not your story," and he's like, "No, it's exactly my story because you use Alibaba to source material for your store. And it's not just you go on Alibaba and you buy 10 of the things."
Right. Well, and it might be so. There's Alibaba and there's AliExpress, and I assume the two are affiliated. I don't know.
Yeah, AliExpress is actually they're really pushing that in places like Russia and Brazil as sort of their move into those markets, but it's not always catching on.
Right. So there was a fantastic experience when I first launched the online store. Your friend of mine, Darren Kitchen, hopped on a plane and flew out, stayed the night with me, and he says, "Look, let me explain to you the world that you're getting into and the way you're going to make stuff happen." And he showed us AliExpress, showed us Alibaba, showed us the janky, weird chat feature where he's like, "Hey, let's pretend we want to buy something." And we went into the world of Alibaba, and before we knew it, we were chatting with somebody through a translation service or whatever, explaining what we wanted and what could be done. Once you do that, it makes it possible for independent small business folk to have take advantage of distribution. It's the Amazon of the world. And in fact, we were able to do ridiculous stuff. For example, on our April 1st, April Fool's Day prank, we pretended that we were bought out by a Japanese multinational conglomerate, and we promised nothing was going to be different. Go look at scamstuff.com, and you'll see everything's the same. Using nothing but plugins in AliExpress, we were able to completely repopulate the store with the most ridiculous, insane stuff you could imagine, and all of it was actually for sale. Like if you actually wanted a balaclava that looked like a viper hissing, then you could buy it through us. It's astonishing what they're doing. And so the question, as far as this acquisition is this leading them to a dominant market position that will allow them to exploit a monopoly, essentially, or is this leading them to a dominant market position that will allow them unprecedented levels of efficiency, like we've seen from Amazon? And that's gazing into the crystal ball. That I don't have an answer for, but I know that I'm definitely interested in it. All of my interactions so far have been positive regarding Alibaba, especially as they start to build up tools that preserve stuff like reputation and much like Uber, you give everyone a rating. How happy were you with the service and everything.
Alibaba is popular within China for people to just buy things the way you would from an eBay or maybe an Amazon. The reason you're using it though is because why? Like why not buy something from another source? What is the advantage to using Alibaba to source that stuff?
First of all, the ability to peruse around is phenomenal, and that's why even if you have no interest, even if you're not running a small business or whatever, just take a tour around and look at play a game with yourself where you just try to imagine the most outrageous thing out there and see if it's on there, and some version of it most likely is. So you have this wide variety and you have this wish list. Basically, Alibaba is a fickle genie where you can make a wish for something you just imagine, and there's a reasonable chance that it's there and available at a reasonable price on there. So one of the problems, though, is sourcing stuff from China, and I'm learning this as we go into we're currently redoing our insurance stuff, and one of the questions asked on liability insurance is, do you source anything from China? And it's not a big percentage, but it is a percentage of our store that right now we're sourcing from China. But the problem is, from a liability standpoint, the buck stops at which point you can't go another link up the chain to find somebody else to blame. Like if we source stuff from a tactical supply company out of Bellingham, Washington, then let's say it's covered in lead or whatever, they could sue us, and we could say like, no, we bought it from these guys, and then it goes to them. But if they say, oh, well, we imported it from China, China's not going to answer the phone. You're not going to be able to sue anyone over there in China. It doesn't matter. So the buck stops there. So I find myself weirdly conflicted trying to figure out how to source stuff at a cost appropriate level, because the quality has generally been very good, but there's all kinds of interesting pitfalls that you could fall into, from anything from, obviously China doesn't respect copyright law, so you have to figure out
that is not true.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry.
China has its own copyright law, and China itself enforces its copyright law.
That's fine. That's fine. I will say, however, as a statement of fact, that on Alibaba, it is astonishingly easy to buy a lot of stuff that are bootleg or
it's
not.
Quite often seen that people have somehow not honored copyright law, at least the same copyright law we have over here.
Correct. And again, I don't mean to step into a morass on all that stuff, but there's all these vectors you have to consider about whether or not it's appropriate for your business to be associated with these things, and that's fascinating to me as we see the transformation of Alibaba to becoming a legitimate global worldwide supplier of the majority of the stuff that you end up buying.
And I read a note that only 2 to 5% of the suppliers on Alibaba will go to the trouble of showing compliance with safety standards, whether it's from the US, Europe, or Australia. So that's one of the reasons you run into that insurance issue, I'm sure. And it makes me wonder if, okay, but now we're moving into Indonesia, Malaysia, places that do have trade agreements with the United States that honor those sorts of things. Would Lazada become another marketplace for that? Or would the fact that really the affordable manufacturers are in mainland China, and so it's not going to matter that Alibaba is now owning Lazada and promoting that, because you still want those people over there who have the better rates?
So this is entirely made up, but imagine a situation where my insurance says, hey, we'll insure you, but only if you promise not to source from China because we have these problems, blah, 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 blah. And I'm looking at the prices, and let's say it's something is $6 if I get it from China, it's $9 if I get it sourced from something that's verified to be in Indonesia. Like that's a slam dunk. If I'm just looking to get the object and I'm going to flip it for, let's say a 40% markup or whatever, it's like, yeah, I'll give up that $3 in order to be able to keep having this and be covered on insurance and have a known supplier that theoretically complies with all these things. Yeah, sure.
Now, the other thing, I think it was good of you to recommend people like, go look at Alibaba. You can buy things there. If you're going to start a business that's supplying from there, you need to do a lot of vetting. Not everybody, just like on eBay, not everybody on Alibaba is on the up and up, and Alibaba does its best to try to verify those, but there have been scandals before, and Alibaba's been accused of not properly vetting people before, so you do have to be careful, like anything else on the internet, right? That said, I thought it was interesting when we were talking earlier that you pointed out that you're not just buying like 5 ducks from Alibaba and then selling them in the United States at a markup, because anybody could go to Alibaba and buy those themselves. It's a value add proposition.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that's really changed in the last 7 years. Let's say back in 2009, you could, if you were willing to brave, I don't know if Alibaba, how easy it was to access, but you could buy a bunch of widgets at 50 cents and flip them for $2.50 in the United States. And you could do it a long time. And in fact, there's entire companies, I don't want to name any, but there are companies who have built their entire business model on buy cheap from Asia and then sell in the United States. But nowadays, we can't get away with that because a lot of our customers at Scam Stuff are very internet savvy. They know how to search for stuff. If we, so what we figured out we have to do is figure out as you said, the value-added proposition. It's not so much, for example, there is a component to our lockpick set. What we wanted to do is come up with the ultimate lockpick trainer, and so we came up with one with a high-quality U.S.-made jackknife, which is a lockpick thing, but by itself, it's only worth, however much, I don't remember the numbers, but we were like, well, I want people to see and learn how to pick locks with it, so we added a very cheaply sourced from Asia exposed training lock. So it's basically a padlock, and as you insert the lock picks, you're able to see the individual pins tumbling in there. So what's great is that anybody can find, if you want to, find one company over here that has a jackknife for sale, then find another company over here, source it, wait 3 weeks for it to arrive from China, and then you end up with like, haha, I showed you, I saved $10 over what I would have gotten it from scamstuff.com. And that's fine. If that's you, then you could do that. But instead, what we want to do is say we're bundling things together for an experience. And yes, we have to be totally transparent. This is where we get everything from. but you're going to get this experience, and you're not going to have to go around finding all the right stuff. You leave that to us, and we hope that's worth the $10 extra that we charge over what it would take if you were to order it directly from AliExpress.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me that we've gone from a world where like, oh, I have to be an importer-exporter to get that stuff, to like, no, I just have to know how to use a browser. So the businesses now have to say, yeah, but we still have the expertise to know what things go well together, or be able to add an etching or whatever it is, like, you know, add instructions to make it worthwhile for you to say, yeah, I don't have to go hunt all this stuff down myself.
In so many ways, this is sort of the I don't know, the service industry inverse of teardown videos, where it's like, oh, we broke down the iPhone and figured out it costs $248, and it's like, right. I'm aware of this fact. I'm still going to pay $5.99 to get it from Apple because I know when it breaks, I can pick up the phone and Apple will have another one for me instantly or whatever. And so if you can lay out all the pieces and have everybody know exactly what you're doing and they still want to buy it from you, then you are adding significant value to these people. And it's interesting because we're the ones who have to write the stories for these things. We have to think, okay, if you get this, what are other things that you really wish would be there? Sometimes it's little obvious things like, hey, nobody sells a UV flashlight that has batteries in it along with UV print powder. So why don't we just bundle all that together and make it simple? And then, we can buy everything at wholesale and hopefully create a package that's compelling. That kind of transparency, I think, is kind of wonderful and empowering both to the consumer, and it keeps producers on their toes.
Yeah. Well, let's get to our pick of the day. Andy writes, I was up late rocking my newborn baby daughter and did what every great parent should, turned on Netflix to pass the time. Its awesome algorithm found me a program that not only I enjoyed, but I thought would be a good pick for DTNS. I binge-watched the entire 12 episodes, which left me wanting more. It's hosted by a really charismatic guy who is up with his tech and street smarts, who you should see about getting on the show. The show is called Hacking the System. It's hosted by Brushwood. I think you would get along with him on the show really well, how he understands and can explain tech and other things. I'm so glad Netflix hooked me on this amazing show that shows some goofy life hacks like making a taser from a disposable camera, and more practical ones like dealing with salesmen to get the best deal. For all who have a Netflix subscription, I think it's worth a watch.
Okay, for the record, like, was this all a ploy that you had when we went through the doc? Like you were hoping that I wouldn't see that this was the recommendation?
I just put it in there. I didn't know if you're going to see it or not.
Yeah, man, dude, it has been astonishing to see. The show premiered a little over a year ago on the National Geographic Channel, but I guess our crowd is just a very internet-y crowd, because the reaction that it's getting now that it's on Netflix is way bigger than it ever was back when it premiered on cable television. But I will say real quick, please, if you enjoy Hacking the System on Netflix, please binge watch it. Let me know whatever your questions are. But more importantly, please leave a review and rate it. That matters.
And I think that answers, Andy actually had a question in his email too. He's like, does it work for you to have the show on Netflix? Do you get a kickback? How does it help you to have the show on Netflix? And your answer is like, review it, like keep it up there.
Yes. I mean, this is what it means. Man, television, this is 10 years ago. It wouldn't matter. It's amazing to me to see how much everything has shifted. It's very rare for a first-time television personality to have any ownership stake in the show. I don't think I'm talking out of school to say that I don't have an ownership stake in the show. So I did get paid to do it. However, I do derive immense brand value. Brian Brushwood as a host and all my other properties. If there's to be a spiritual successor to the show, it's good for Jason Murphy. It's good for Brian Brushwood. As long as the show is well rated and well reviewed, it puts us in a position to pitch our next project like that.
Send your picks to us, folks. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. You can find more picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. A couple emails before we're out of here. Bill Burlingame was hearing us talk about VR on yesterday's show and wrote in and said, my granddaughter and her family visited us last week. Her oldest turned 4 on February 27th. He has a book about the solar system and has been engrossed with it since before he turned 2. So I set up my Google Cardboard with the Titans of Space app using my Nexus 6P for my granddaughter to see. After a while, she put it on the 4-year-old and he got all excited. He was looking all around, jumping up and down, calling out the things he was seeing, naming planets he was seeing, naming their moons. He looked down and said he could see the astronaut, even with a simple Google Cardboard implementation. It seems like VR could be a great teaching tool.
Dude, absolutely. I'm astonished at how good Google Cardboard is. As far as like, you know, it's obviously not the fidelity of an Oculus or a Vive, but going from 0 to anything is a big, big leap.
And then we were talking with Justin Robert Young last week about decentralization of tech companies. Brian Henry, who is a business professor, wrote in and said, whether or not companies are decentralized or hierarchical is not a question of one works and the other doesn't. Both can work. I think of it the way I do myself versus other professors. We each teach in our own way. The best don't try to be something they're not. So Apple is top down because Steve Jobs was the commanding personality. They have yet to do anything brand new or successful as the iPod, the iPad, or the iPhone since his time running the company. So it remains to be seen if Apple will ever do anything as revolutionary as those again. However, Mark Zuckerberg isn't like Steve Jobs, and so they are more decentralized. This works as long as the people being left alone are competent and do their jobs without the individual silos becoming competitive in a way that would cause harm to the whole. There's a large body of literature on this sort of thing, he says.
Right on.
Thank you, Brian, for sharing your expertise with us. And thank you all for watching. Brian Brushwood, obviously, scamstuff.com, hacking the system on Netflix. What else you got going on?
Man, I had to do a count. We added a new show, The Modern Rogue. A lot of people really like what we're doing on hacking the system. So Jason Murphy and I realized that we don't have to wait for the next big project to come along. We could actually start doing it right now. So if you go to themodernrogue.com, then you get to see a playlist that'll take you right through all of these fabulous vignettes. Everything from us building homemade gas masks and then testing them against pepper spray versus we make prison spears. We learn how to crack bullwhips. It's utterly fantastic. You'll before you know it, you'll understand why you need a burner phone. I'm really proud of them.
So that's themodernrogue.com, folks.
That is correct. Although, yes, exactly.
Hey, thanks to everybody who supports us. We couldn't do it without you. Literally, we exist because you see value in the show and you give value back. If you haven't supported us yet and you'd like to, dailytechnewsshow.com/support has all the ways to do it. There's actually a YouTube button. There's a PayPal button. We did have a Bitcoin button, and someone pointed out to me today that it's broken, so I'm working on fixing that, and we'll get that one back as well. But patreon.com/DTNS is actually the main way to support us. That gives us our ongoing budget, and we have lots of perks there, like insider stuff, access to behind-the-scenes stuff, the treasure chest, which has additional audio content in there. Go check it out, patreon.com/DTNS. If you can help us out, we'd love it. Whether you can help us out or not, if you do enjoy the show, please review us on your favorite podcast app like iTunes or something else, and just tell people about it. If each one of you could convince one other person to subscribe to Daily Tech News Show, it would be huge. We could do so much more. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. That's 593-2459. Catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. And visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Scott Johnson. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Bingo. Good show.
Next time, just introduce me as the chuckling guy at the end of every episode.
If you've heard a chuckling at the end of our episodes, you'll recognize this next voice. Yeah, you're on. You, Scott, and Justin are on every show.
So that makes the four of us the only permanent cast members of DTNS.
Right.
Dude, every single time, I'm always astonished at how fast those shows go. It's amazing.
Try to keep it rolling, man. We pack it in. We pack it in, folks. It's daily. That's the thing, right? People don't have a lot of time. You gotta.
It's true.
Show titles?
People are picking their podcast based on the duration of their commute. There's somebody out there
Yes.
with a 35-minute commute, and he needs
That was the big lesson at Buzz Out Loud, is that 30 to 40 was the sweet spot, mostly because of commutes being around that length.
And then, if it runs a little short, people, they can just kind of hum the rest of the way in. At the top is license, registration, and phone, please.
License, registration, and phone, please.
It's your fault for being in Canada. I like that one. I don't know why. It's just funny.
I like that one too.
Alibaba, the Fickle Genie.
Yeah, that was good too, actually.
Never get involved in the copyright war in Asia.
Nice.
It's a nice nod to.
I don't know if we'll
Princess
use
Bride.
that, but it's funny.
Okay. Agents on Messenger, and Messenger is initialized.
Working hard there, Silverblade. Appreciate the effort.
Brian, Textilizer, Alibaba, Lazada, hates Mondays. Lifting Didi.
Lifting.
If
Got it.
you want something on topic for what we talked about, I do like Alibaba as a fickle genie.
Alibaba is a fickle genie.
Fickle Genie.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that one too. Let's go with that.
My default would have been it's your fault for being in Canada, but I don't know why. It's just the funniest thing.
We pissed off one Canadian already with yesterday's Cord Killers by incorrectly telling Fraser, I did, that NFL Twitter would stream in Canada. And apparently it won't. Like, Canada is the exception to the NFL statement that it will be worldwide.
Well, it's in that weird position. It's another country, but technically it's not international when you make a phone call. It's long distance.
NFL's press release said this will stream worldwide without authentication. And then Barack McBush on
Barack McBush?
Twitter, that's his Twitter name,
okay.
said pointed to a Globe and Mail article. It's like, oh no, except in Canada. Won't be doing that in Canada.
It's kind of weird. It's like so close. It should be a state, but it's not.
I guess it's because it's Rogers. Rogers has the rights to stream it in a way
don't
that
blame
CBS
people
and
with my
NBC
name.
don't.
Can't
Sorry,
blame
it's just the
Rogers.
truth, Roger.
It's a Roger-spiracy. Rod-spiracy.
Oh yes, y'all.
Poor Fraser.
Yeah, sorry if I forgot. The moment you mentioned Alibaba, I started talking, and then you gently corrected me, saying like, "And we'll talk about that later." And I was like, "Dude."
Oh no, that was the right amount. I didn't think you had forgotten. It was more like, hey, here's a little teaser, and then we'll get to the rest in a minute.
Good deal.
Yeah, that worked for me.
So broilers. So chicken broilers. I was looking for an oven.
What?
No, an Alibaba. They have a vertical gas.
Oh, so you're actually you're shopping on Alibaba right now
Yes.
for a chicken broiler.
They have broiler poultry feed, magnesium oxide.
It's a trip what you can find on there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. It's great. What's great? Do yourself a favor. Type in something like North Korea and see what comes up.
It sounds like a trap.
No. Like
Iron sand dredging vessel in North Korea.
I found this amazing T-shirt. It was a full bleed T-shirt of Kim Jong Un, like pointing and smiling, and behind him are the Hollywood Hills. Only instead of Hollywood, it says North Korea on there. It's just some amazing stuff. It's like,
wow.
Culturally, when you
I'm not even sure that's like, is it meant to honor or insult or neither?
My guess is whoever's selling that shirt gives two craps whether or not
right.
you are
They're
just
like, I don't know, but it sells. Oh man.
BioCow, I think, found the link. Yeah, there it is. If you click on the chat, look at BioCow.
Oh, nicely done, BioCow.
What is it?
Wow.
Shop
Oh, so it's
in
full
junk.
bleed. I get it now. Like full bleed across the arms and everything.
Yeah.
He kind of resembles.
You are that picture if you wear this shirt.
It's so funny because he can't trade. I mean, he hates everyone, so he can't really trademark his face.
You get a crew neck sweatshirt of Kim Jong Un with the tagline "Take me seriously" above and below it.
Wow.
It's so good. I love our strange, wonderful world.
You know what they need to do is
insane.
make a hoodie version. You know, you've seen those hoodie versions where you can zip up the face portion and it's like a mask. Can you
Yeah.
imagine if it's his face, so you can be him?
Oh, look! I bet it's there. That must be there. If this stuff is on there, that has to exist already.
What's really funny is to type in names of people that you know that are American, but maybe, just maybe, popular enough that there are knockoff bootlegs available of their DVDs and products.
Yeah. Like Brian Brushwood.
I checked myself. There was a brief while that somebody was selling a bootleg of like a show I did at Georgia something college. Georgia.
It crossed out Brian from my results and gave me lovely landscape paintings when I wrote in Brian Brushwood.
There is a Chihuahua peeing if you type in Brushwood.
There's a canvas art print of some people cleaning up after a forest fire. Seriously.
It's the best.
What about Roger Chang? That's got to bring something up.
I typed in V8 engine, and all you get are those stupid emblems.
Jolly Rogers. Yeah.
Volkswagen V8 timing chain tensioner. I don't know who makes most of these. I would like to know. Like, if you look at it, does it tell where they're sourced from?
Probably Chinese factories.
Because, like, oh, I see who it's from. Yeah, you know, it depends. Some of it's really iffy. You can't really tell until you actually see it.
Well,
Especially
and I linked to them in our show notes. I found several articles with guides to, if you're going to do business on Alibaba, here's things you need to know. Here's how you vet your sources. These are the common pitfalls in communication. And
That was one of the stories Darren told me. And again, I don't think I'm betraying any confidences here, but he was saying that there was one supplier that he was chatting with looking to get some network equipment made, and he says, hey, is it possible to get that in black? And they're like, yeah. And then they sent over a picture of it in black. He's like, great, I'll take a bajillion of them or whatever.
right.
And then he got them, and they were definitely the same white units, just spray painted black.
Black.
Yeah.
So literally didn't get lied to.
Yep. No,
Right?
correct. And apparently that's what you have to watch out for.
Yeah. That might not even be a scam, right? That may just be a like, oh, well, sure, I could make it black.
like if you said you wanted it to make it from a black plastic material.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of those, it's weird because a lot of those factories do multiple things or runs for different vendors.
Well, and we have the same thing with food production in the United States, right? Like whether Wendy's, McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, they're all sourcing from the same mega conglomerate, literally in the same facility. It's just like, okay, for the next 48 hours, we're doing the Wendy's run, and follow these procedures.
Oh, man. I still remember visiting the warehouse in Coldwater, Ohio, the pet milk plant, and my dad showing me all the pallets of evaporated milk in like dozens of different brands. Like, oh, there's the Kroger brand, and there's a non-pet brand, and there's this other brand. And he's like, yeah, these all come out of the same. They're the same thing. They're
Well,
exactly
it's because that's the only way you can really run those processing plants. Yeah. Unless they're owned by the parent company. I mean, it's just not. You just can't let the equipment sit idle and have people just come on and off, because to make money they have to be constantly running. It's like printing presses in the day.
Hey, speaking of which, my captain of operations at scamstuff.com, John Tilton, is bugging me because I have to make some decisions about sourcing our next original product.
Look at that. See, folks, it's real. He wasn't lying. He really does this.
All right, I'm going to bug out. I'll see you guys.
All right, thanks, man.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, Roger, hit me up anytime. Just lock me down for another date. This is a lot of fun, and I'd love to do it again.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Let's do it.
All right, bye.
Bye. And luckily, I am pretty much out of the post here.
So he doesn't. Does he need to log off, or did he?
He's going over to hang up right now. I'm sure. The computer is not in the same.
It just looked like he walked off set.
Yeah. See ya, bitches. All right. That is it. We are out of the post. The show is up. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye.